Monday morning of week 5, I think it is, 2025 college football season. Bye week for Nebraska. Did you take the week off or did you watch other college football? Because there are so many comments, over the past week that, I see them. I see you. Matt Rule's a fraud. Matt Rule's a used car salesman. Dylan Royola isn't any good. And when I see those comments, number one, I think a lot of them are trolling. Fine. Uh, I think a lot of people that have those conclusions or come to those conclusions don't watch a lot of the college football. So, did you during this bye week? Did you watch other teams play, or did you just take the week off? Because I watch a lot of college football, and I think if you watched a lot of college football, you realize that other teams have a lot of flaws too, just like our beloved Cornhuskers. Um, some thoughts on the weekend? Wow. Let's see. But probably the big ones. Alabama beats Georgia, which is hilarious. What did I say last time? Kalen DeBoer will probably be fired because he's not Nick Saban. Maybe that'll do him big favors, but it's pretty hilarious that Alabama just owns them, even though I wouldn't call myself a huge Alabama fan. That was pretty funny. Oregon, Penn State. One of my closest work colleagues is a Penn State guy, and I felt bad for him. And yet, I don't know what your, feelings are about Oregon and Penn State. Oregon certainly looks poised to, be easily one of the top 5 teams in the nation, poised to actually win a championship for maybe the first time in Oregon's history. And Jim Franklin, I don't see anybody making the comparison, but I will. It took 20 years for Tom Osborne to win a championship. And God, did we bitch at him all the way along the way. 1978 was the first time he beat Oklahoma. And up to that point, people were pissed off at him and wanted him gone because he couldn't beat Oklahoma. 1981, the first game of the season, he loses to Iowa 10-7. And he goes 1-2. And oh my God, the town of Lincoln was about to be burned down. Then, of course, he had that bowl streak where he kept losing, in the bowls. And you remember the joke, why does Tom Osborne eat his cereal on a plate? Because if it was in a bowl, he'd lose it. That joke was prevalent up until he went on one of the biggest runs in college football history with the 5-year 60-3 record that, was the mid 90s. Nobody has the patience these days to wait for 20 years for James Franklin to win a big game. I think that James Franklin is obviously a really good coach. It was kind of disappointing to see Penn State lose that game. I thought it was a really, really good game, between two really, really good teams. Dan Lanning at Oregon, I kind of like the guy. I know he's pretty emotional. He's a quote machine. One of the things after the game is the Oregon's defense ran over to the student section and gave them hell. There's videos or photos of players flipping off the student section and people, complaining about lack of sportsmanship. And, as an old crusty guy, what I do is this. When I see things like that and I think, well, we would have never done that on our day and our coaches would have never allowed that kind of crap in this day. What I usually ask myself is this bad or is it just different? Because I know the student section is probably yelling at them stuff that we would have never yelled in those days either. But that's also a lie because we were pretty raucous. I mean, my friends used to love drinking a lot of Bacardi 151 before football games. And they got carried out at halftime. They got carried out of games a lot. But so we were pretty unsportsmanlike in our day too. The players weren't. Osborne would have never stood for that. Most coaches would have never stood for that. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Whether it's bad or just different, the way that football is now with the interactions between fans and players. So there's the James Franklin, Tom Osborne comparison about can't win the big one. Okay, what else happened this weekend? A lot of Big Ten teams. Do you watch other teams? Let's go back to that for a second. Do you watch other teams play football? If you did, you realize that a lot of them have Everybody has their flaws. Minnesota Rutgers, probably a tougher game that it should have been. Right? Flaws on those teams. Minnesota's probably, without Darius Taylor, they're severely hampered. Who else did I watch? Well, I guess the big one this weekend was the game last night, Green Bay, Dallas. I like the NFL. I like watching it because it's football, number one, and number two, I'm amazed at the athleticism in the NFL, the quarterbacks especially. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, guys like that. I am been a Packers fan my whole life because I didn't know any better when I was young. Uh, I do like watching the NFC North. I like watching all the teams from the NFC North. But that game last night ended in a tie. And it's kind of fitting that it ended in a tie. But I went onto Twitter this morning and my God, people are pissed off about it. It's kind of funny because over on my history channel, somebody had suggested that I do a video about the history of ties. And I started looking into this. And, what's really changed about the history of ties is our attitude. Is that years ago in college, all of football history, was that ties were just accepted as normal. And now, my God, like I said, they just piss people off. I was shocked at how angry people were. And of course, I was surprised at how angry I was at Green Bay last night. I don't take my NFL fandom that serious, but why did Matt LaFleur kick the ball in overtime? You got a Dallas defense that they can't tackle. They didn't tackle worth shit. They tackled worse. If you wanted to watch a defense that was bad, it was Dallas, and compare them to complaining about Nebraska not tackling well. They were like, Green Bay ran through them like shit through a goose. And then Matt LaFleur kicks the ball off in overtime. What the hell? And then at the end of overtime, Dallas goes down, gets a field goal, and Green Bay gets the ball, and they dawdle their way down to the field where they could have won that game. They're just walking around like Sunday afternoon stroll. And then they instead, with 1 second left, they go ahead and go for the tie instead of taking one more shot in the end zone to win it. In that case, I think you see a coaching staff that isn't going to win a Super Bowl with Matt LaFleur because he's too much of a candy ass puss boy wiener man. Either try to win games or piss off. Sam's still pissed off about it. Let's be honest. They played so terribly, and when teams do that, they play for the kick. When teams play for the kick, kicking 50-yard field goals has become like eating breakfast, pretty common. But you play for that, you run the ball. I hate coaches that do that shit. All right, let's go back to the beginning. Did you watch any football this weekend, college football, or did you take the weekend off? If you did watch college football, do you really think that Matt Rule is a used car salesman and a fraud? And do you really think Dylan Raiola is a mid quarterback? I'm curious to see your thoughts on this Monday morning, and that's why I took a few moments and stopped on my morning walk and started blabbing. Any other games of notice this weekend? Let me know. All right. We'll be talking to you. Maybe I'll do a preview for Michigan State. I don't know yet. Take care.